I talk a lot about what is the difference between different styles of music and how we can notice those characteristics in our own style of writing so we can be more of who we are. Now, the singer-songwriter and folk genres have a lot in common with country and pop, but there are some things that distinguish this style from those others that I think are worth mentioning and help us as writers to see why we sound like we do. So come with me into what makes singer-songwriter and folk what it is. Now, when I say singer-songwriter, I'm talking about Lizzy McAlpine or Jason Isbell, and these writers have qualities in the sound that they produce that might veer more towards the pop realm or veer more towards the country realm, and these are production elements in many ways. But what I want to talk more about is the writing. How is the writing characteristic of singer-songwriter? What makes that label feel right? Now, in terms of Jason Isbell, I think about it like this. Singer-songwriter requires that the artist is also the writer because it is such a unique expression of their own experience, particularly lyrically. And so we might find that artists in this area either do all of the writing or kind of lead the collaborative experience. And it's not until after they've established themselves as artists that others begin to recognize their brand and can now write towards that identity. Jason Isbell writes incredible lyrics, and I think nobody would really argue that it's the lyric that draws us in. That is not to say that the music isn't also effective. It is, but without the lyric in many of his songs, I would lose a large part of what makes him unique. Now, Jason Isbell tells these amazing stories from the perspective of someone who is, dare I say, unhealthy. He gets into situations willingly that might not be the best for him with people who are perhaps a little dysfunctional, at least in the way that he describes them. There's always this sense of incompleteness or loss or jaggedness that comes out in his songwriting. When Jason Isbell sings his songs, I'm taken into a world of a character who is a very colorful one. He is trying to make amends over and over in his songs, either with himself to keep from making the mistakes he's made before, only to kind of self-sabotage once again. And this character is, to me, a little more consistent with the mentality of singer-songwriters of today than it is with a traditional country character who is not, let me say this word, the victim. Now, they are responsible for this world that leads them to prison, but they don't have this sense that they are helpless against the challenges that face them. And this is a little issue for me in terms of where we're at with singer-songwriter styles at the moment, and certainly it bleeds into pop and bleeds into commercial country, contemporary music within this area, is that the characters are often viewing themselves as victims of their own circumstance. Not all artists within singer-songwriter carry those messages, but a lot of them do, and I have to say, I am looking forward to a time when the artistry that's expressed within the singer-songwriter realm is not bending towards that victim mentality, but regains some of that accountability or personal growth, perhaps, that allows those characters to see more than just their one side of the story or one perspective of the picture. Be that as it may, this is where a lot of singer-songwriter characters reside. So you get a lot of the same themes where you've got, I'm pining after someone who doesn't love me back, or they hurt me and there's nothing I can do about it but be angry. So I'm going to write the angry songs, right? It's kind of binary in nature. Now, true, absolutely true. But we tend to get kind of flat experiences of characters sometimes in singer-songwriter, not quite as nuanced as I'd like to see. And this is where Jason Isbell or Lizzy McAlpine do a beautiful job of kind of bringing in that multiple perspectives or thoughtfulness, mindfulness into their writing that I can really appreciate. And that is also characterized by production elements that begin to make their way into the picture that separates singer-songwriters sometimes from straight up folk or traditional country that might not utilize arrangement and production values, but leave that to just a picking pattern that repeats throughout the tune, something that works just acoustically. Now, in the sense of the song I Guess by Lizzy McAlpine, some of what we hear that I'm saying is production value is this off-kilter nature to her phrasing. I never quite know when she's going to start the next phrase, and it's intentional that she's saying, I guess, and the feeling is uncertainty. This is absolutely a device that we can use within the writing process. And the way that we do that is with this slow tempo is to just be very laid back in the measure so that it's uncertain when we're going to give the listener the next bit of lyric. She also has a lot of rest space. So unlike traditional country, which will tell a story, and that story will unroll at a predictable pace, in Lizzy McAlpine's music, we often get this sense that she's sort of thinking as she sings. So there's this very present, sometimes uncomfortable nature to it where we get the sense that she's not sure. Now, it all comes out very beautifully written. And so within that uncertainty, I get high intentionality. Nothing is a mistake, but it still is very organic in its nature. Now, something that's really interesting is in the singer-songwriter style, we find that the character is expressed through I, pronouns like I and you. And so this makes the song what we'd call direct address. I am singing and I'm addressing a singular you character. Now, this creates a very small, intimate moment, and it works so well for these songwriters who are trying to bring us into a critical moment where two people are having a conversation or navigating a relationship in a particular way. So Lizzy McAlpine will say something like, straighten your tie, we're not alone. I'll tell a lie just to bring you home. And she goes on to say, we dance together, you're not that good. I'll tell a lie, but it's understood. I guess it's all about timing. I guess it's all about the things you want but never get. Now the you is the universal you. She is sort of pontificating. She's just thinking out loud. This is a very singer-songwriter thing to do, where we take a personal moment and then we generalize in the chorus to what it means to life, to the rest of us, to being human. There's a certain helplessness that's coming through here, a certain sense of doubt. And that is also characteristic of Lizzy McAlpine and those who have come before, like Phoebe Bridgers. Now, Jason Isbell does something very similar. Are you looking to be alone? Or can I sit with you a while? I don't want to be a stranger anymore. So Jason is talking directly to the you character. And he says, you won't even have to smile. We can talk about the rain, how it can't seem to stop. Something stupid like the football game, or I can tell you where to shop. And then he says, we're running out of options. It's time to close the tab. If you insist on being lonely, let me put you in a cab. Are you looking for something easy? Do you need to feel alive? Do you crave a love that tears through your life like a Category 5? I get the sense that now Jason's kind of talking about himself and the human condition. Because yeah, we want that. We want something passionate. So there's this style in singer-songwriter that's a different way of writing lyrics and handling stories that we don't see in commercial pop, where it doesn't go sometimes that specific and image provocative, and traditional country, where there's not so much of that doubt, uncertainty, helplessness going on, that makes this such a unique genre in which to write. Now, you might find that there's a point where your lyrics and song styles sound quite similar to many artists within this genre of singer-songwriter. And it's true, I think, that when we put a lot of emphasis on the lyric, like we do in singer-songwriter, and then we also write from that same perspective of that type of character, which is certainly influenced by the culture in which we live, then what we're doing is expressing so many of the same qualities of artists who've gone before us that we can't really distinguish ourselves. And so I think that in singer-songwriter styles, it is ultra, ultra important that we express what is true to us. And so we're going to grow the genre in this area of lyric without taking on, kind of mimicking some of those characteristics that others have already established as the roots of what singer-songwriter is right now. Now, another thing we can do, and I think Lizzy McAlpine does this beautifully, is she plays a little bit more harmonically. She's more adventuresome than we see in singer-songwriter styles that stem from a more folk and country background, but they veer into pop in the sense that she's trying out some influence from R&B, from jazz, and that's coming in a beautiful way. Jason Isbell sometimes does this through mood and groove, where he'll have the harmonic rhythm causing some of the movement and interest in the song. Now, both of these artists will come back to lyric, which ultimately signals to us that this is in the realm of singer-songwriter, but it's a quality that we can't deny makes this style work. So if you find that you have elements of singer-songwriter making it into your writing, see about how your character is being expressed through the lyric, and maybe ways in which you're not fully appreciating your unique voice and how that could grow this style a bit further. And then don't discount the musical potential that you've got in your instrument, both with harmonic rhythm and with cool chords that can help to draw attention to lyric areas that you might want to paint with a little more color. This is something that we can say begins to bleed into the production areas with rhythm, like changing the number of measures in a line, dropping a measure, dropping some beats, adding measures unexpectedly. Always do those things with regard to what am I trying to cause? What feeling am I trying to make? It's prosody. That describes the alignment between the music and the lyric. And I think that in singer-songwriter, we have opportunities to do this even more than we're doing sometimes in that down the middle sort of mainstream singer-songwriter stuff. So those would be areas to look, I think, to become more of who you are when considering the singer-songwriter style. I hope you've enjoyed this video and it helps you to know a little bit where to look to expand who you are and your enjoyment of writing songs. If you liked this video and found it helpful, like and subscribe to this channel. If you're looking for more in terms of your songwriting craft and a community, I invite you to the EMC Institute. This is a popular music school where I teach some classes. Some good friends and industry professionals of mine teach other courses to help us get better at music and communicate our ideas more effectively. Just click the link to learn more, and I'll see you there.